The honeymoon disappearance of Emily Carter. The shock. If you think paradise is always safe, you've never heard this story. Subscribe, and let's begin. The waves of the Aegean shimmered like liquid glass under the moonlight, calm, indifferent, and endless. Somewhere between Santorini and Mykonos, the Celestia Dawn cruised quietly through the water, its decks glowing faintly gold. It was after 4 a.m. when the scream came, sharp, short, and swallowed by the wind. By sunrise, Emily Carter was gone. Her husband, Daniel, was found half-conscious outside their cabin, shirt ripped, smelling of alcohol and salt. He told the crew he'd fallen asleep on the balcony, that he woke up and Emily wasn't there. But when the steward opened the balcony door, they froze. Blood was smeared across the white railing, droplets trailing downward like a signature. The captain ordered a ship-wide search. Dozens of passengers crowded the hallways, whispering. Emily and Daniel had been married only 8 days. She was 28, an art teacher from Vermont. He was a financial consultant, ambitious, charming, and always just a little too loud when he laughed. They'd shared pictures of their Santorini sunset dinner on Instagram just hours before. #Forever starts now. Now, her shoes were found neatly placed beside the balcony door. But no sign of her. The ship's security logs were supposed to record every camera feed on Deck 9, where the Carters' suite was located. But when Chief Security Officer Vasquez reviewed the footage, half the files were missing. Corrupted, the technician claimed. A system error. Vasquez didn't buy it. He replayed the few minutes he had, a fragment showing Emily and Daniel stumbling toward their cabin around 2:45 a.m. Emily looked upset. Daniel was carrying 2 glasses. Then, at 2:52, a group of men appeared, 4 passengers, early 30s, loud, half-drunk. One of them slapped Daniel on the back, another said something to Emily that made her turn away. The clip ended there. No more footage after that. When Vasquez asked Daniel who the men were, he hesitated. "Friends," he said. "We met them at the casino. They were harmless." "Then why," Vasquez asked, "did 2 of them request to disembark early this morning, right after your wife disappeared?" Daniel had no answer. Hours later, the Greek Coast Guard arrived. Divers searched the waters, the sonar mapping the undercurrent lines like veins. Nothing. No trace of a body. But that evening, as the sun dropped over the horizon, a passenger on Deck 7 pointed out a shape floating far behind the ship, a flash of white fabric, tangled hair. The Coast Guard pulled her from the water at 7:42 p.m. It was Emily. Her nightdress was torn. There were bruises on her wrists, her wedding ring missing. Yet, strangely, her body showed no clear sign of a struggle, just a deep, crescent-shaped mark near her shoulder. The coroner later called it consistent with impact. Daniel collapsed when they told him. Reporters swarmed the port, and within hours the story spread across every major network. American newlywed dies on honeymoon cruise. At first, it sounded like a tragic accident, too much champagne, a balcony fall, a terrible twist of fate. But as investigators examined the scene, inconsistencies began to surface. The blood smear on the railing wasn't consistent with a fall. It looked wiped. And someone had cleaned the cabin's floor with disinfectant before the crew arrived. Daniel claimed he'd done it out of panic. But a partial handprint found on the bathroom mirror didn't match either of them. The interviews began. A neighboring passenger, an older woman named Teresa Vaughn, told officers she'd heard shouting around 3 a.m., "It sounded like a fight," she said. Then a loud thud. And, someone crying. Another couple said they'd seen Daniel arguing with a dark-haired man near the ship's bar earlier that night. Emily looked uncomfortable, they said. Like she wanted to leave. The crew confirmed that Emily had visited the ship's infirmary the previous afternoon for what she described as a fall down the stairs. Her bruises suggested otherwise. And then came the message, the one that changed everything. At 5:30 a.m., just hours after Emily vanished, a crew member found a folded note beneath the service trolley outside cabin 9243. It was damp from the sea air, the ink smudged but legible. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. The ship's captain immediately sealed off the cabin, but by then, international waters had turned the case into a jurisdictional nightmare. Greek authorities, American consular staff, and the cruise company's lawyers all circled like sharks. Each wanted control. Each wanted silence. Daniel was questioned for nearly 12 hours. His answers grew contradictory. He said Emily went to bed early. Then later, he said she'd gone to get fresh air. When asked about the note, he claimed he'd never seen it. Emily wasn't afraid of anyone, he said. She was happy. But forensic analysts found something else, a small smear of blood beneath Daniel's wedding ring. His knuckles were bruised. He said he'd hit the railing, in shock when he realized she was gone. By the second day, the story was international. Pundits speculated on foul play, jealousy, and money. One detail kept resurfacing: Emily's $500,000 life insurance policy, signed just 2 weeks before the wedding, with Daniel as the sole beneficiary. Yet, despite mounting suspicion, the Greek authorities concluded there was no definitive evidence of homicide. The case was closed as an accidental fall. But 2 months later, the Celestia Dawn's maintenance crew discovered something that reopened every wound. During routine refurbishment, a technician repairing a ventilation shaft behind cabin 9243 found a small piece of fabric wedged deep inside the vent, torn lace, matching the trim of Emily's nightdress. And next to it, a tiny charm, a silver heart engraved with initials. Not EC. It read DR. When investigators ran the initials through the ship's manifest, they matched a passenger who had left the cruise early, David Reyes, one of the men last seen with Daniel that night. The man who, according to witness statements, disappeared before the ship even docked. And when detectives tracked down Reyes' cabin number, they found something on file, a maintenance report filed the morning after Emily vanished, noting broken mirror glass and traces of blood on sink. But it was never investigated. Never logged. Never sent to police. Vasquez looked at the evidence, the timelines, the missing footage, and realized the case they'd called an accident wasn't an accident at all. It was a cover-up. He returned to cabin 9243, locked the door behind him, and listened to the hum of the ship's engines, the same hum that had drowned out Emily's final scream. Then he lifted the floor panel beneath the cabin's minibar, where the maintenance log said the leak had been repaired weeks before. Inside the hollow space, he found something glinting in the dark. A ring. Emily's wedding ring. And wrapped around it, a strand of hair. The spiral. The Greek authorities closed the case in record time, accidental death by misadventure. But Chief Security Officer Miguel Vasquez couldn't sleep. Every time he shut his eyes, he saw the smear of blood on the railing, the missing footage, the initials DR etched on that charm. Something about the official story didn't fit. So, 2 weeks after the Celestia Dawn docked, Vasquez boarded her again. The ship was quieter now, stripped of its honeymooners and laughter. Its halls smelled of bleach and secrets. He carried no badge, just a folder filled with copies, maintenance logs, shift reports, and screenshots of Emily's Instagram posts. He started with cabin 9243. Someone had repainted the balcony railing, sealing over the faint outline where blood once glistened in the sun. But as Vasquez opened the cabinet below the minibar, he found the faintest mark, a serial number scratched into the metal panel. It matched the repair invoice filed under David Reyes. Reyes. The charming, tanned American who'd spent half the cruise partying with Daniel Carter. The same man whose credit card had been charged for $900 worth of champagne at 3 a.m., half an hour before Emily vanished. Reyes was gone, but his name had resurfaced, in the FBI's files. Back in the States, Special Agent Julia Harper from the FBI's International Crimes Division was already chasing the case. The bureau had been flooded with calls after the media storm. Emily's parents, passengers, even a crew member who'd claimed the cruise line, paid people to stay quiet. Harper was meticulous, methodical, and stubborn. She'd worked cases that began as accidents and ended in indictments. And she saw the same pattern here, inconsistencies buried under paperwork. Her first stop, Daniel Carter. He greeted her at his condo in Boston, dressed in black, surrounded by sympathy cards. He spoke softly, carefully, too carefully. His grief felt rehearsed. Harper noticed a few things immediately: the new watch on his wrist, the unopened mail on his kitchen counter, the absence of any photos of Emily beyond their wedding portrait. When she mentioned David Reyes, Daniel froze. "He's just some guy I met on the ship," Daniel said. "We played poker. That's all." "Then why," Harper asked, "did he wire $15,000 into your account 3 days before the cruise ended?" Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "I'll repeat the question," she said. He stared at her, then laughed nervously. "It wasn't what you think. It was repayment. A bet." "Then you won't mind signing a release so we can confirm that," Harper replied. Daniel didn't sign. Meanwhile, Vasquez had uncovered something the FBI hadn't: the Celestia Dawn's hidden server backup. The cruise line claimed the surveillance files had been corrupted, but ships of that class always kept a shadow backup for insurance reasons. Vasquez contacted a friend in IT who owed him a favor, and 2 days later, a drive arrived at his apartment in Piraeus. Most of the files were still unreadable. But one, labeled Deck 9_03H05, wasn't. He pressed play. The grainy footage showed the hallway outside cabin 9243. At 3:05 a.m., Daniel stumbled into frame, shirt unbuttoned, holding a wine bottle. Moments later, Emily appeared, barefoot, wrapped in a robe, following him. They argued. Emily's gestures were sharp, desperate. Then Reyes appeared, along with 2 other men, one identified later as Matthew Cole, a passenger from Miami. The men laughed, and one grabbed Emily's arm. She pulled away. Daniel didn't stop them. Instead, he turned back into the cabin. The footage cut to static. But one frame, just one, captured a reflection in the glass behind them. A phone, recording. Harper confronted Daniel again, this time with the frame printed in front of him. "This is your wife," she said. "These are your friends." Someone was filming. "Where's the phone?" Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "You think I killed her?" he said, voice cracking. "She fell. She'd been drinking. You can't imagine what it's like to watch your wife fall overboard and know you can't save her." "But you didn't report it immediately," Harper said. "You waited nearly an hour." "I was in shock. Or covering something up." He slammed his hand on the table. "You don't know what you're talking about." But Harper did. She'd seen too many men crumble exactly like that, when truth edged too close to the lie they'd built. Then came the leak. A crew member sold a snippet of the recovered footage to an online tabloid. It spread in hours: grainy video of Emily shouting, Daniel turning away, and a hand reaching for her wrist. The caption, "Was it murder at sea?" Public outrage exploded. The cruise line panicked. The FBI doubled down. And Daniel Carter went silent. Then, 1 week later, an envelope arrived at Harper's office. No return address. Inside, a USB drive and a note written in block letters. "You're looking in the wrong place." It wasn't Daniel. "Check room 917. Room 917 was 2 doors down from the Carters. The occupants? David Reyes and Matthew Cole. Harper's pulse spiked. She loaded the drive. The file was labeled 917_audio. Static. Then muffled voices, male, laughing, glasses clinking. Then Emily's voice, faint, "Please, stop recording this." A pause. Then a sound, a door slam, followed by chaos. The FBI traced the source of the USB to a postal drop in Athens. Surveillance showed a man in sunglasses, hat low, possibly Vasquez, though his face was never confirmed. Harper didn't care. Whoever sent it had just turned an accident into a potential homicide. Interpol issued an alert for David Reyes and Matthew Cole. Reyes was last seen in Lisbon, withdrawing cash. Cole had vanished entirely. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter hired one of Boston's top defense attorneys and went on national television, claiming he was being persecuted by conspiracy theories. But when Harper subpoenaed his phone records, something chilling appeared. At 3:07 a.m., 2 minutes after Emily was last seen alive, Daniel's phone made an outgoing call to Reyes. Duration, 17 seconds. Reyes never answered. But the tower ping placed Daniel's phone not in his cabin, not on the balcony, but in the hallway outside room 917. Exactly where Emily's voice was last heard. The FBI confronted the cruise company again. Pressured by lawsuits, they finally released a hidden file, an internal investigation log written by the ship's former security chief, dated July 20, 2005. One paragraph stood out. Reyes requested access to service corridors near cabin 9243, claiming his keycard was malfunctioning. System confirms entry at 3:14 a.m. Maintenance staff later found bent latch on exterior balcony door. A bent latch. A missing ring. A midnight fight. The pieces started falling into place, but not in the way Harper expected. Because buried deep in Emily's phone records, retrieved from her iCloud backup, was a text message she'd drafted but never sent. "Mom, if anything happens to me, tell them to check Daniel's safe." Harper ordered a warrant. When they opened Daniel's home safe, they found travel documents, cash, and a flash drive labeled honeymoon_video. The file wouldn't open. It was encrypted. But the file name's metadata contained one word, a tag used for indexing by the device that filmed it. It read, ReyesCam_1. Harper stared at the name glowing on her monitor. The man who disappeared. The man with Emily's blood on his sink. The man whose initials hung from that silver charm. And then a notification appeared at the bottom of her screen, a new email from an anonymous sender. Subject line: "You're too late." Attached, a video clip, just 9 seconds long. The frame opened on the Celestia Dawn's balcony, moonlight flooding the scene. A woman's shadow, a man's voice whispering, "Don't scream." Then a sudden jolt, a gasp, and the camera tumbling toward the sea. The file cut to black. And at the end, a timestamp burned into the frame, 3:17 a.m. The exact minute Emily Carter disappeared. The reckoning. The video clip replayed in Harper's mind for days. 9 seconds, that was all it took to unravel everything the world thought it knew about Emily Carter's death. But the hardest part wasn't what the video showed. It was what it didn't. The man's face was never visible. Just his voice, low, slurred, but familiar. Daniel Carter's attorney immediately called it a malicious deepfake. The cruise line claimed no such video could have been filmed without detection. And David Reyes, the man behind ReyesCam_1, was still missing. Yet, in the shadows of bureaucracy, one person wasn't done digging. Miguel Vasquez. He'd been following the trail from Greece to Italy, to a marina near Bari, where a man matching Reyes' description had rented a small yacht under a false name. Vasquez tracked the transaction, the signature, the engine logs, and there it was, Celestia maintenance contractor, Reyes D. Vasquez knew what that meant. Reyes had used the ship's maintenance access not to hide, but to escape. And maybe, not alone. That night, Harper received a call from the Greek Coast Guard liaison. A local fisherman had recovered a waterproof bag tangled in his net off the coast of Syros. Inside, a phone, corroded but intact. The tag on the evidence file read simply, "Property of D. Reyes." The FBI's digital forensics lab spent 3 days unlocking the device. What they found inside flipped the entire case. The phone contained video fragments, all taken during the cruise. Drunken parties. Poker games. Emily and Daniel dancing on deck. Then, later, something darker. At 3:03 a.m., Reyes filmed inside cabin 917. Daniel Carter sat at a table with Reyes and another man, Matthew Cole. They were laughing, but Daniel wasn't himself. His speech slurred, eyes unfocused. Reyes pointed the camera at him. "You sure she'll forgive you?" he joked. Daniel laughed weakly. "She'll sleep it off." Then Reyes lowered his voice. "You owe me, remember that." Daniel looked up. "I said I'll pay you." Reyes smirked. "You already did." The video cut out. At 3:11 a.m., the next clip began. Emily stood in the doorway of cabin 917. She looked terrified. "Where's my husband?" she asked. Reyes' voice answered, "Right here." The camera panned. Daniel slumped on the couch, half-conscious. Emily tried to wake him, shaking his shoulder. "What did you do to him?" Reyes moved closer, his tone changing. "You should relax, Mrs. Carter. It's your honeymoon." The camera trembled, someone grabbing it, a scuffle, a cry, then silence. The next frame was the balcony railing, moonlight glowing over waves. A shadow fell. Then the sound of something heavy hitting water. Static. End of file. Harper sat in the evidence room, the glow of the monitor painting her face pale blue. She'd seen many kinds of evil in her career, greed, jealousy, rage. But this one had a different flavor. Calculated. Opportunistic. Reyes hadn't meant to kill Emily. He meant to record her humiliation, to blackmail Daniel later, for money, for silence, for power. But something went wrong. Emily fought back. And Reyes pushed too far. Daniel's guilt wasn't for murder. It was for cowardice. For letting Reyes manipulate him, for watching the line blur between recklessness and tragedy. Harper finally had her answer, but not her suspect. Because Reyes was still out there. 3 months later, a call came from a Lisbon hotel. A guest checked in using a fake passport, David Renault. Mid-30s. American accent. The cleaning staff found blood on a towel. When local police raided the room, it was empty. The balcony door open. The curtains fluttering. But on the desk sat a small envelope, addressed to FBI Agent Harper. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "Tell Daniel the ocean doesn't forget." The drive contained one final video. Reyes' face, finally visible, recording himself in the cabin mirror of a small boat. He looked gaunt, unshaven, his eyes haunted. "She wasn't supposed to die," he said. "He said she'd just pass out, and we'd scare her, that's it. Then she fell. I tried to grab her. I swear I did. But Daniel, he told me to keep my mouth shut. Said he'd make it worth my while." He looked away, breathing hard. "Now they're all after me. The cruise company. The cops. Even him. He's not innocent, Agent Harper. He's worse than me. You'll see." He turned the camera around. The lens caught something, a pistol lying on the counter. A single gunshot cut through the recording. Static. Harper stared at the black screen for a long time. Then she pulled up Daniel Carter's latest bank records. A transfer, $50,000 to an offshore account in Cyprus, dated 2 days before Reyes' death. The transaction memo, for silence. That was enough. Daniel Carter was arrested at Logan International Airport trying to board a flight to Zurich. The media swarmed again, widower accused in honeymoon cover-up. But in court, Daniel denied everything. "I didn't kill her," he shouted. "I loved her." The jury saw the videos. They heard the recordings. They listened to the phone logs. Daniel Carter was convicted of obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and negligent homicide. But not murder. Because technically, he hadn't pushed her. He just let her fall. After the trial, Harper visited the Aegean. She stood at the same shoreline where Emily's body had been found, the sun setting over the endless water. She carried one thing with her, Emily's wedding ring, recovered from the floor panel in cabin 9243. She placed it gently into the sea. For a long moment, the ring floated, catching the light, then slipped beneath the surface, lost again to the depths. 6 months later, the Celestia Dawn quietly retired from service. But one night, during a routine dismantling of its lower decks, a worker found something wedged inside a sealed compartment near cabin 917, a waterproof camera, its memory card still intact. The footage was brief, the same balcony, the same night. Only this time, the camera was facing inside the cabin. It showed Daniel Carter pacing the room, muttering. Then Emily's voice, faint but clear, from outside, "Daniel, open the door." He looked toward the balcony. His expression, guilt, fear, hesitation, then his hand on the lock. He closed it. The camera kept rolling as he whispered to himself. "She'll calm down in the morning." He poured a drink. And behind him, through the glass, the ocean swallowed the sound of her final scream. The file ended there. Harper never released it publicly. She didn't need to. The truth was already written, not in court transcripts or police files, but in the silence between frames. A silence that haunted everyone who ever set foot on that ship. Because in the end, the sea doesn't hide secrets. It keeps them. And sometimes, it brings them back. If you think this story was intense, wait till you hear the next one. Subscribe so you don't miss it.